Okay, I think we're ready to start our session. My name is Tiana Solis. I'm an instructor at Florida International University in the Knight Foundation School of Computing and Information Sciences. I teach computer science and IT undergraduate courses, and I'm very excited to be here with you today and to be with Dr. Caroline Harding. Thank you very much for attending this session. The gender differences in hackathon as a non-traditional educational experience. As you know, hackathons has been a popular event lately, so we're gonna learn a lot today. Uh, with no further ado, I would like to introduce our wonderful speaker, Dr. Caroline Harding. She's an assistant professor at Western Washington University. She's currently doing research on hackathon, computer science, education, toys, and games, CS teacher training, digital privacy, education, and e-textiles. She's the lead designer of the new CS pre-service teacher training program at Western Washington. Dr. Harding, please take it away.
Thank you very much. There you go. And make sure I think everything is working. I want to start out by doing a poll. I want to know how many of you are familiar with hackathons, because while they've been growing in popularity for a decade or two, they're far from universal. And I love asking this question because and seeing how the results have changed over time. So I think we got a poll popping up here. Yes. Are we able to share the results of this poll? Okay, let's see, I think I can do that. End polling. There, let's share results. There we go. So most of us are familiar with it, but not everyone. And not a lot of us have had a chance to participate in it and know what the experience is like. So there's hackathons are this fascinating emergent CS education phenomena with hundreds of thousands of people over the world benefiting from them every year, but still many of us haven't participated in them ourselves. And the reason for that are related to the reason that women returning to the workforce into technology haven't had a chance to participate in them or haven't perhaps even heard of them either. So in this talk, we'll go over the literature review briefly on what we know about women returners at hackathons. We'll talk about the theoretical framework and the methodology that I used to do this study. I'll review the coding and data analysis and the results. Then I'll show you the limitations in future works and the contributions and implications. To give you a quick spoiler on the results, they show that women returners are rare at hackathons, partially due to the time footprint of the event, that women returners are looking for additional supports for collaboration, and that they see risks in terms of how participation will affect their classwork and health. They do benefit from hackathons, but not as much as men, but there are some things we can do to improve the situation. So first of all, let's talk briefly about what is a hackathon. Well, hackathons are a time-bound, collaborative, project-based computer science competition, increasingly popular with CS students, and are one of the largest scale innovation in computing education in the last decade. In the 2018-2019 academic year, for example, there were 220 hackathons at universities, which were organized with the help of Major League Hacking, which is a nonprofit which helps students organize hackathons. Each of these 220 hackathons had over 200 attendees for a total participation of 78,000 undergraduates and graduate students. Hackathons hold particular promise for underrepresented and non-traditional students as they offer a way to leverage their expertise and follow their interests outside of more rigid formal experiences while contributing to real impact in their communities. Additionally, the career connections and mentoring aspects of hackathons are especially important to women who are reentering computing and education and careers, a category that I'll refer to as women returners in this work. Hackathons have many different styles and topics. Some are community organized, civic hackathons aimed at addressing policy and infrastructure needs. Others are industry organized hackathons for professionals to learn new skills or fast track passion projects. The most common format of hackathons is hosted by a university student organization, and they invite people to gather in small teams for a marathon of collaborative technology creation. Participants often come from the regional area, but some will travel from other states, cross country, or even internationally to attend the hackathon. The technologies employed at the hackathon often feature emerging technology, which is not yet covered in their traditional classes. The participants, after hacking all night or all weekend, conclude the event with presentations, judging, and prizes. These events are designed to maximize the learning and work time by providing everything required for intense rapid progress. They'll come with free food, caffeine, industry mentors, they'll help you find teammates, they'll organize motivation, they'll give you a space to take a nap, they'll provide content area expertise, equipment to borrow, software, exclusive access to APIs, and more caffeine. In the picture, you can see a hackathon career fair up in the far corner there. Um, and then we can see like a typical table that people are working at with the food and their laptops and everything all working around. Here's a picture of typical hackathon catering, often fast food, pizza, that everyone can come grab. And then the final picture here is like a typical layout, a large room with many tables, everyone gathered in a very buzzing with activity. It's a very energetic feel to it. But because of there is a wide range of hackathon format, I'm going to study the key subset of these student organized university hackathons of at least 24 hours. And this was selected because they are the most widely available to women returners. They do provide targeted support for beginners and early career participants, and they have been making efforts towards reaching underrepresented groups. While hackathon enthusiasts see these events as transformative to participants, critics point out how the events tend to have low diversity and the events may promote an unhealthy narrative of computer science, meaning working unhealthy hours late into the night while eating junk food. But little is known in the literature about the experience of women returners at hackathons, especially in regards to if they attend, how they collaborate, and do they feel comfortable taking risks. The equity and inclusion at hackathons is really important because hackathons can help women returners refine their career goals by giving them a chance to spend time talking with industry mentors and trying out a day in the life of a computer scientist. And so since hackathon participation confers real career benefits, it is important that women, and especially women returners, are able to share fairly in these benefits. From the literature, we know not a lot about women returners. We do know hackathons have the same demographic challenges as the tech industry and the enrollment in tech degree programs as a whole. We know very little about the age ranges of who attends hackathons from the literature. And those that do track attendance tend to track attendance at the door, and we don't know very much about how long they stay for, other than we know that only about 60 to 70% of participants will submit a project for judging. We don't know who it is who's doing that or whether that's representative. No study was found in the literature which focused on women returners. Um, uh, Although what we do know from the literature about women returners is that their needs overlap a lot with the benefits that come from hackathons. For example, since hackathons emphasize learning cutting edge skills, They're an excellent fit for women returners who are concerned that their skills are out of date. And the focus hackathons have on real world projects meet women returners' preference for learning which has clear paths to practical usability at a job. However, for most women returners, or 23% of them, experience family responsibilities as a major barrier, and many have suboptimal parenting arrangements, which may prevent them from participating in hackathons as hackathons are currently designed. The common format of hackathons is 24 to 72 continuous hours of intense work with junk food to eat and napping taken on a sleeping bag on the floor. That's found to deter women. And the literature has many articles about how, while sometimes hackathons are perceived as welcoming to women, other times they're experienced by women as aggressively competitive and intimidating events. So many people, let's talk about the theoretical framework then. Many people are familiar with stereotype threat, the idea that being aware that others may have a biased opinion of you can affect your performance. You might be less willing to take risks, less you prove the stereotype right. And the distraction of worrying about it also makes it harder to concentrate on your work. So I was looking at stereotype threat, and I was also looking at social cognitive career theory. Social cognitive career theory is a structural equation model which says that interest is built out of self-efficacy and perceived value of the outcome. A lot of people say, well, women just aren't interested in hackathons. And I was like, well, what does that mean, interested? Well, the value that comes, this model shows it's out of those two things, self-efficacy and outcome expectations help build into that. The value of a career in computer science is pretty well established at this point. But women returners may not be interested in hackathons if they think they're not likely to do well, if they don't have that self-efficacy. And that self-efficacy is influenced by the environmental supports. Have people who are like them succeeded before? Is help available if they get stuck? What evidence suggests that the event is designed for people like them? If those things are lacking, they may feel like they are not likely to do well, and then they're just not interested in the event. This study aimed to answer two research questions. One, how does hackathon participation differ by gender? And two, what implications does this have for women who are re-entering the workforce into careers in technology? For the methodology, this study used mixed methods to analyze surveys, interviews, attendance records, and collected artifacts from two large undergraduate hackathons and one fashion tech hackathon. The fashion tech hackathon was added to better understand if centering a technical skill with a high percentage of women participants would change the experience for women returners. Um, so here we have the different instruments and how many people participated in it. What we found out was that women returners participate in hackathons in very low numbers. According to the data from Major League Hacking, women who will be over 25 years of age at graduation were only 3.5% of all attendees. So because of this, the study began by studying how women of all ages experience hackathon and then applies that to what is known about the specific needs of women who are returning to the workforce. The three hackathons were selected were given the code names of Shrimpy Hack and Hardy Hack, which were large MLH-supported hackathons organized by CS undergraduates, and Fashion Hack, which was an inaugural East Coast hackathon organized by a textile design undergraduates. Combined attendance was over 1,600, and all events occurred pre-pandemic. This study collected 318 pre-surveys, 80 post-surveys, 122 short interviews, 13 long interviews, and 119 document artifacts. To supplement this study collected, I got demographic data from Major League Hacking's annual Hacker Census survey. It was 46,000 responses, and that gave a broad overview of trends across hundreds of university hackathons. And then the data from the sources was analyzed using both quantitative and qualitative analysis. For the participants were recruited both in person and with physical and digitally posted notices. Incentives were a raffle for a $50 gift card and in one portion, cans of Red Bull. Talk about the coding and the data analysis. Each participant completed a variable combination of the data collectors, the registration data, the pre-surveys, the short inter-event interviews, the post-surveys, the long post-interviews, and project submission data. Not every participant did all of those. So I wrote a Python script which helped combine the records across the different collectors. The qualitative text segments were then coded or tagged with themes from the theoretical framework. So here are the codes on collaboration. We found people were looking at where people find collaboration was good or bad. Did people feel like they learned from their team or they didn't learn from their teammates? And did they think that skill diversity on a team was good or was challenging? Because we wanted to see if people who came in with a different set of skills from life experience thought that that was a benefit for their team and collaboration. Here we have the codes on mentor helpfulness. The hackathons typically provide industry mentors who will walk around and help answer questions, as well as answer both questions on their project and the technical aspects, but also questions on careers and pathways and what it's like to work as a computer scientist. The codes where mentors are or are not helpful. Some people were not sure if the mentors were helpful. This often came from the pre-survey where they had not yet used the mentors. And some were not aware that the mentors were available. They didn't know that they were going to be there, even though it was typically well advertised. These were the codes on risk taking. Some people said that the risk was to their classwork, that participating would mean that they were likely to get a poorer grade in homework because of time taken away from it. Some participants saw the risk of participating as to their health because of the poor quality food, the inability to get sleep, and factors like that, and the stress of working for so long, drinking so much caffeine. Some saw the risk of hackathon was you could create a project that was embarrassing. And so both your friends and your classmates who saw you would just be embarrassed to show off what you were able to make in 24 or 72 hours. Some people said that hackathons had no risk. There was no sense of real risk. Nothing really terrible could happen through participation. And some said the risks that were there were good for learning and they helped you. Finally, we have codes on project submission thresholds. Because many of the participants said that the reason they didn't want to participate is because they didn't think they could make a good enough project, or the reason they left early was because their project wasn't good enough. I wanted to dig into what does it mean for a project to be good enough to submit, since the hackathon organizers typically say that anything will be acceptable. And having served as a hackathon judge, I could say that I have seen just about anything be submitted. So this is what the codes were on project submission threshold. The top was mostly functioning, like you needed the code to be a mostly working proof of concept of the work. Some said it just needed to have something there, demonstrate the idea, something would run, but it didn't need to be fully featured or polished or anything. And some people said there really was no threshold. There was no minimum threshold for what needed to be submitted. Let's look at the results. Oh, there we go. Participation. Here is the chart of participation at each hackathon. You can see that we have the ratios of men to women at Hardy Hack and Shrimpy Hack. The CS hackathons was generally representative of the gender ratio in their CS degree programs, about 80-20 there. At the Fashion Hack, though, it was reversed. It was 73%, 74% women and 26% men. We didn't know the gender of everyone who participated. Some didn't participate in a collector that got that, but we were sometimes able to connect that from other collectors they participated in. We did see that about 50% of those who registered attended, which is on track with what we know from the literature. And we could see the total attendance there. Finally, we can see the average team size, which was just almost 3. The 4 is the typical maximum at these events. Here's the participation by gender in each instrument. I'll move my head a little bit there. Again, we can see that this was about roughly on par with their participation in the hackathon. We can see that we had 75 women registrations at all of these 3 hackathons, right? 69 did the pre-survey, 27 did the inter-event interviews, which were just short 1-question, 1 or 2-minute interviews done during the middle of the event. 29 did the post-survey, and 6 did the post interviews, which were longer 20-minute interviews that I scheduled there. And for the not collected column, that's because we did not have, they declined to fill out that field. Like 46 people didn't fill out their gender on the pre-survey registration or the pre-survey. Here we have participation by race and ethnicity. Although this study did not analyze this, I did collect it because it is very important and we want to look at it in future work. So we have it collected. And again, you can see this is broadly representative of trends in CS degrees and technical programs as a whole, where it's primarily white and Asian participants. We hope to analyze this data a little bit more in depth in future. The year in school of participants. The gender difference here was not statistically significant. I think I got a P of like 0.079, so not statistically significant difference. We do know that from the MLH data that women who would be over 25 years of age at graduation would only be like 3.5% of all attendees, while men would be 9.6. So that's 3.5 compared to 9.6. Within each gender, 11% of all female student survey respondents would be over 25 years compared to 13% of male. And that comparison between intergender was statistically significant. So there were more older men present than older women. As a point of comparison to this, the National Center for Educational Statistics says that for the bachelor's, master's, and post-degree certificates, 43.4% of those are earned by people over 25 years of age. So where 43% of people in programs will be 25 years of age when they graduate, only 13% are hackathon attendees. So there's quite a gap between their participation in education and their representation at these events. Here we have the number of CS classes taken for participants at the 2 CS hackathons. I separated these out because the gender ratio at the fashion hack was so different that, and the number of female participants was so low that extracting it out gave a better understanding of what happened at the typical CS. So here we see that 30% of women have had one or no CS classes, and that's compared to 13% of men. So more than double women have had very little CS experience when they come to the events. And in this chart, you can see that the number of hackathons attended before the hackathon under study. It's very, you can see there's a huge drop off after the first hackathon. Most people had not attended a hackathon before or had been to just one before, and it drops off pretty steeply after that. It's interesting to note that I had to exclude 2 participants from this chart because they had hackathon participations in the 20 and 30 range, and that was making the chart too long. So some people are very enthusiastic about hackathons. So in summary, hackathon attendance for women overall is low, but roughly equivalent to their rates in CS undergraduate programs as a whole for women overall. But women returners were not well represented in proportion to their numbers in education. Possible explanations for this are that they feel hackathons are not welcoming to older women participants. Some said they didn't want to feel like the mom in the room, or they simply have too many competing demands on their time. The women who did attend were more likely to be first-year undergraduates and have taken zero or no CS classes. And this could be explained by the women who do attend either having a bad time and deciding not to return. That's why we have a lot of first-time attendees and not a lot of subsequent attendance. Or that as women progress in their CS classes, they feel increased academic pressure, and then they feel like they don't have the time. And it's because they need to attend to classwork. And we'll see a little later that a lot of them said that classwork was a major barrier to them. The time footprint of hackathons, the 24 to 72 hours, was especially problematic for women returners who are more likely to have outside jobs or have family responsibilities. Furthermore, the health, comfort, and safety options for overnight portions of the hackathons are typically less than ideal for women, which again may make the hackathon participation less appealing. Overall, women returners are underrepresented, but there are ways that we can address that so they can achieve those significant benefits of hackathon participation. Look at the results in terms of collaboration. In collaboration, I had 3 sub-questions. Do participants prefer to work on teams or alone? Do they believe the teams they have helped them learn? And did they find the support of mentors to be helpful? Do they prefer to work on teams or alone? So here we have the team size wanted by gender. Um, we have women, we could see that women overall prefer to working with their friends. Um, Sorry, this chart is showing, did they achieve their target team size? Um, and what team size did they want? And you can see most wanted 3 or 4 was the ideal. Some said 5 plus, which is funny because that's not allowed by the rules, but very few wanted to work alone, right? They When they had their teams, they preferred working with their friends because they already knew their friends' skills and work ethic, and they had a history of positive communication with their friends. Additionally, many participants saw hackathons as social events, and they enjoyed spending the time with their friends. Most hackathons have that limit of 4 per team, but there were some statistically significant differences between men and women, what team size they preferred, and what team size they were able to achieve. On average, women had worked with 21% of their teammates before, but men had worked with almost double, 37% of their teammates before. So women were more likely to be on teams with people they didn't know, even though they preferred to be on teams with people they knew. 30% of women, compared to only 18% of men, said they didn't want to work on with team members they didn't know at all. And 97% of men, but only 79% of women, were able to achieve their desired team size. Overall, women returners want to be on teams, but they're not as successful as finding them. They also want to know their teammates before the event. Do the participants believe that the teams they have helped them learn? Women returners were 3 times as likely to say they had not learned from their team, mostly due to there was being a large gap in skills or rigid work divisions. Stereotype threat may play a role here, as novice women may feel reluctant to ask too many questions of their teammates. We saw some of that in the qualitative responses, but we also saw some evidence for bias in work divisions and roles where women were more often pushed towards the artistic or front end aspects of the project. Overall, 67% of women said the collaboration they experiences they had were good, and only 7% said that they were bad. Here we can see the collaboration and mentors. Hackathons provide these industry mentors to collaborate with teams, answer questions, and give career guidance. We can see here that at the CS hackathons, Hardy Hack and Shrimpy Hack, they were combined because the structure of their mentoring was very different from Fashion Hack. And we can see at the CS events, 56% of women did not know the mentors were there. And that may be because women were more likely to be a first-time hackathon attendee. At the Fashion Hack, their mentorship structure was much more successful. Everyone knew they were there and everyone thought they were very helpful. So in conclusion on collaboration, for women returning to the workforce, attention should be given to helping them before the event make connections with others with whom they can attend, but hackathons can also offer more scaffolding for successful team collaboration. Furthermore, hackathons could do more to orient first-timers to the presence of mentors and how to use them, as mentoring is a very valuable aspect, especially for women returners. Look at the risk-taking results. So we had 2 sub-questions here. How do participants of different genders consider hackathons as a space which is safe for taking risks and learning through failure? And 2, how do participants of different genders' perception of risk affect their decisions to persist or quit the main event competition? Here we could see how men and women differed in what risks they identified. Overall, 15% of women mentioned a risk somewhere in their responses, but only 4% of men said some sort of risk, looking over all of the responses they made on all the collectors, compared to 15% of women. The women were perceiving more risks. The biggest gender differences in the risks they were perceived were to health and to classwork. You could see 18% of women said participation created risk to health or classwork, compared to 3% of men. So women do see different risks at hackathons. Here we can see the reason they would leave. Um, we wanted to figure out if we wanted to look at risk because we wanted to determine what is influencing women's decisions to stay for the duration of a hackathon. What reasons do they have to leave? This is really difficult to collect as participants may decide to take a break from a hackathon and then just never come back. Or they may have decided to leave, but then feel bad about it and not want to tell the researcher about it. So special care was taken in the data collection to mitigate these factors. At the beginning of the event, they were asked if they knew they had a reason to leave early. And 53% of women and 23% of men, 53 to 23% of men. So they did know of a reason they would likely have to leave early. And that was a statistically significant result. 84% of women said the reasons they were likely to leave were a planned reason, such as they had classwork or prior obligation. And this supports the conjecture that outside pressures on women returners' time impedes their likelihood of gaining access to the benefits of hackathons. Then at the inter-event interviews, which are again 1 or 2 minute interviews, really quickly done in the middle of the event, typically in the hallway, they were asked how they would decide if they were going to stay or keep working, or they were going to leave. And then in the post survey, they were asked if anyone from their team had stayed, and if they none had, why that had occurred. The reasons for quitting the event were coded as I would never quit for anything. I would quit if my team falls apart. If I had classwork or because of classwork, I will quit. If my project isn't making any progress, I'll quit. I have a prior obligation, so I know I have to go, or I'm going to leave when I need sleep. So the emergence of online hackathons during the pandemic as a more commonly accepted option means the future of in-person hackathons is unknown, as the online format may offer solutions to some of these challenges. We can see in this chart that there are some big differences where men say they will leave if their team falls apart, but women never said that. Women were much more concerned about sleep, and they had uh, more concerns about classwork. This was in the middle of the event. So some of them may have already left by the time we did this survey. Here we can see attrition for participants at each of the events overall. Participants are free to submit their projects at any time, and at the end of the event, judging is typically a science fair type showcase, followed by finalists doing presentation. So of the 100% who attend, we can see that on average, by the time we get to judging, it's only about 40% of attendees. Only 40% of attendees will submit a project, and then a few of those will leave before judging occurs. Sometimes that's because they submitted preemptively and then ended up quitting, or sometimes judging gets delayed and they have a ride, they have to get onto a bus and they have to go. I have no research yet on virtual versus face-to-face hackathons, although I am collaborating with Major League Hacking, so I hope to get some results on that. Although I think we're going to see hopefully some encouraging trends in terms of women's ability to stay. Here we have the minimum threshold to submit, where we asked. There wasn't really a difference here. Because from Stereotype Threat, we would think that perhaps women would set a higher bar for themselves in terms of what they think they need to submit in order to be eligible for the prizes, but there really wasn't a lot of difference in this, which is good. Now, this work took the novel approach of examining the submission rates by gender. And we show that at 80% of the hackathons studied, the 3 studied here, plus the pilot studied, the women had lower results, but those results were not statistically significant, but they do suggest the need for further research. So we can see here that it's about 40%, at 40% depends. The big perk in the middle on females, a Shrimpy hack, Shrimpy Hack had a female leadership team, so that might have influenced that. Because you can see that they submitted significantly more than men at that particular event, whereas at the other events, they tended to submit at a lower rate. So more research is needed here. Risk-taking results, summary. So demands on women's time were a leading reason for them to leave, some of which can be mitigated through a better event design. And while Stereotype Threat would suggest that women would be more nervous to take risks, they overall found hackathons as a place they could take risks and learn through failure. Men, however, felt even more comfortable than women and were less concerned about schoolwork, health, and safety. Additionally, the more hackathons men went to, the more comfortable they got, where that did not happen to women. Stereotype threat may be playing a role there. And the social cognitive career theory would suggest that women's interest in hackathons will be lower if there's insufficient environmental support, which did really seem to be the case here for women returners. So the contributions and implications. So while hackathons are typically organized by students, they are also typically have faculty advisors, and the organizers are receptive to learning more from research and their faculty advisors about how to create more inclusive events, especially for women returners. Childcare is still a major barrier for women returners, but not an irresolvable one. Hackathons could do as many conferences now do of organizing supervised kids' rooms or helping participants coordinate between themselves for shared in-home care, or just create more options for participation with flexible locations and timeframes. Faculty could also do more to advertise Hackathon to women returners specifically, including helping coordinate team matchmaking before the event, giving advice about how projects which aren't finished are perfectly acceptable entries, and offering guidance on how to make best use of the available industry mentors. And finally, we could give more help to women returners um, in terms of being able to balance their classwork and hackathon participation. Faculty could reduce classwork pressure by maybe participation could count for an assignment or for extra credit. The course, the focus of the course could organize tutorials and technical talks at the hackathon, which participants can attend and benefit from, as well as other ways for them to blend the attendance at the hackathon with their classwork so they are not competing. Limitations. A limitation is that all these institutions were predominantly white. Future work will look at a greater diversity of institutions. Some future work I want to do is I want to track the participants' ongoing decisions to stay or leave to help resolve the issues which cause a large portion of attendees to not persist. I want to figure out like what is causing people who have gotten there to not stay, as well as we need to know more about how to get people there. So this will mean I need to try to locate the women returners who do not go to hackathons and determine why they didn't. I also want to find that 3.5% of women participants who are women returners and do more in-depth studies on them specifically so we can understand what their experiences are like at the hackathon. And from this, I hope to find further suggestions for the modification of the designs of hackathons to create more space for women in tech. Thank you, and I will take questions. Let's see, should I be reading the questions in the chat or? No, there's a
If
Google Doc.
anybody in the audience has any question, you can unmute yourself. If not, I have a few questions that I gathered from the chat.
Good afternoon, Dr. Harden. That was a very good presentation. I have been interested in hackathons for multiple reasons, even for children. And I have a couple of questions. You are addressing women in hackathons. Did you look into a code of conducts and how they affected the participation in the hackathon?
No, but I really want to start doing that because there has been a bit of an internal code of conducts have had a little bit of there's been some argumentation within the tech community about the necessity of them, which I think they are very necessary. But some people are like, well, you can't write code of conducts that will cut everything out and they're ridiculous and all this stuff. And so I think that internal tension about people like, I don't want my behavior policed, versus people knowing that if something occurs to them, they can get help from the conference, that they know that who to report to and that action will be taken, right? And that their presence there will be protected. So there has been this internal tension on it, and I think it's very interesting. What I don't know is how much participants look to see if it's there as a condition of attending. I know some women who are already in tech, like that is for them, like if there is no code of conduct, they will not go, because they're aware of this internal debate. And they're like, if the organizers aren't on board with this, then I know it's not a conference for me. But from someone coming into the field, I don't think they're aware of that debate, and I don't know if it affects their decision to go or not. It definitely will affect their experience if something adverse happens, because there will not be a good procedure for dealing with it. But I don't know if it affects anyone's decisions to attend, but that would be fascinating to look into.
Yes, I had an experience with one hackathon a couple of years back, where there were no code of conduct. They were all college students, but there were no code of conducts. And what happened is, I don't know if it's in the midst of the stress of going into a hackathon, the lack of sleep or food or over coffee, but there was some issues with harassment of women in teams with a majority males. And it was really sad to see that there was no way of resolving that problem within the time of the hackathon or outside of the hackathon because of the lack of code of conduct. So I'm just, yeah,
Uh,
that,
I can say Major League Hacking does require that the hackathons post one as a benefit of Major League Hacking supporting the hackathon. And so many of them have one posted, but whether that's just very pro forma or whether it's like they've received any training in what to do if harassment occurs or they're committed to that is a very big open question.
huh, interesting. The other point that I wanted to bring up, it's the idea of the subjects to hack that enables women participation. So a lot of the hacks that I have seen, although they're in tech, they really don't appeal to perhaps the female population per se. And
Yep.
that might be another reason why women do not tend to participate as much. I'm just putting that out there to see. I mean, it looks like from your data that you captured from the different hackathons, when there is something related to fashion, you had a lot of women, but then the other ones that were related in general, I don't know what the topics were. You didn't mention that, but the ones that were computer science related, you had a much lower amount of participation for females, right?
Right. There is, so that has been a thing that people are trying to figure out, whether the way the topic is, you know, makes it clear that people are welcomed in. One of the things that has helped hackathons is that they often emphasize we're going to help communities, we're going to help people with these skills. And that is something that women in tech really gravitate towards, the opportunity to contribute to their communities. And so that's a good thing. But yeah, like if it has a topic emphasis, some hackathons have a theme that women feel like is intimidating or they're unwelcome to. Though most hackathons do have like a theme, but then you're open to do whatever you like. Again, but whether first time attendees understand that, yes, there's a theme. I think Shrimpy Hack's theme was shrimp farming. I named it that.
Okay.
You're using technology to help shrimp farming. Um,
Sure.
whether right that people who are coming there understand that that is a theme in which there are prizes, but you are generally free to do whatever you like. You just aren't eligible for that track of prizes. The fashion tech hackathons I think are fascinating, and there are a couple of them. And I was actually hoping to go to a larger one to study it, but uh, I was involved in a minor train crash and couldn't go to that hackathon. So I'm hoping to get the Fashion Tech Hackathon in Detroit in a future year once the pandemic is done. There's so much interesting stuff with e-textiles that could be done. And creating a space where they're like, well, maybe I don't feel comfortable with this technology, but I feel really comfortable with this part. So this is a part that I can stand on to build from with my confidence.
So my last
One
comment
question that I
is
would
related to a hackathon that we have. It's called Food Future Hack, and is to hack for solving food waste and hunger. It's open for Florida college and university students, as well as high school students that are interested on applying tech to the problem, or they want to do a community engagement, an idea. We call it an idea hack, whether it's a community engagement or some other form that doesn't necessarily use technology. So I want to encourage.
posted in the chat. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. So,
Yeah.
but we do appreciate the presentation. I know there are a lot of questions from the Q&A, so I'm going to try to get it to Dr. Harding, but there is one in particular that I wanted to have a quick answer, if possible. To promote inclusivity and visibility, how have hackathon organizers provided accommodation for women participants with disabilities? How can we advocate for better ways to implement disability accommodations?
Right. So most hackathon formats do not do a particularly good job of this. And that's partially because the people who are organizing it are undergraduates they haven't had training in this, and their only experience is other events they've attended, which may have had extremely insufficient support for disabilities too. At the events I've organized, like we had sign language interpretation available. We made sure all areas were wheelchair accessible, etc. But that isn't most hackathon organizers are not aware of this. So I'm hoping to work with groups like Major League Hacking to help them give the support and training to student organizations. Right now, it's not a lot. It's not a lot that's available, and that's unfortunate, but these are a very flexible format, and there's no reason we can't add more support.
Wonderful. Everyone, let's give a big round of applause for Dr. Harding. Thank you very much for an insightful presentation. And we are hoping that we will continue to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you so much.